Well, welcome back to the show. We've got Param, who is a recently graduated and trained spine surgeon. Is that about right?
That's about right.
And, okay, so you got to get this. I've had some doctors on the show, and you know, I've learned about the 30-year mortgage you get when for your college bill. Now, Param takes the cake. The last 18 years, he's been schooling to become a spine surgeon, and the bill is now $500 and what?
$2,000.
He just checked it yesterday. His college education is $502,000. So he needs a specialist to guide him through how much he's going to have to pay out of the salary. Now we're on we just met, and I'm driving him to his interview. Well, what's his company? His interview?
It's a private practice.
Private practice. They obviously need a spine surgeon.
That's right.
And you're going to move near, if you get the job, you're going to move near him?
Ideally. I live in San Francisco now.
Oh, you live in San Francisco?
Right now, yeah.
Okay.
For my last year of training. And the next...
the last bill.
Well, I'm in fellowship, so I'm making some money.
Okay.
It's basically indentured servitude. So,
yeah. And right now you're paying the $800. Is that what you're paying now?
I'm paying what I can, which is about $800 to $900 a month. You know, just to take down some of that interest.
So if you just continue to pay $800 a month, that'd be a couple hundred years from now. You'd be able to pay the. What is it penciled out?
Yeah.
So it's $800 a month. Let's say $1,000 a month. Yeah. That's $12,000 a year divided by 500,000. Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, something like that. So, but then when you make the big money, what's the top level spine guy get? A couple million a year?
The best guys that make money just from operating and not from other sources of income can probably make about 1.2 probably. The guys who make a lot of money, multiple millions, usually have it coming from some other sources. They either own a surgery center or they own some sort of imaging situation where they're getting paid for doing not surgery.
So if you were to say operate on someone real famous, and that would give you a lot of notoriety, some investor might say, let's start your own practice. You save the president's life, right? You get a bunch of spine guys working for you, and you want to diversify. You need a heart surgeon, and maybe a liver surgeon. I'm going to put together a team of surgeons, and we're going to start our own little surgery center.
I looked at another opportunity where a general surgeon has done just that. He's a general surgeon, so he does, he takes out your appendix or your gallbladder when you need it.
Right.
He, smart guy, started a group with him and a bunch of different types of surgeons. So he's making money from operating himself, and then he's also making money off of cases that each of the other guys is doing. And then so he's got, there's money to be made in medicine, but I don't want to go at it
just for money. Yeah,
money.
Right.
It's not,
you want to do some good. Well, that's what
good.
You didn't become a doctor just to make money, right?
I don't want to go broke or poor. That's why this whole $500,000 thing is probably one of the highest I've heard. Actually, what I owe is probably the highest. I think most people when they come out of
300, right?
3-ish. Yeah.
3-ish. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I went to some expensive schools and I did a master's degree, and my parents weren't. I didn't want to put the burden on them. They're hardworking folks. So I didn't need them stressing out.
Right.
So
you got
myself.
So congratulations on being like the top debtor.
Feels great.
Debtor. And again, you say it's 67% government regulated interest rate.
Oh yeah. It's all about. So I was lucky enough to get. I didn't have to go get private loans. I got them all through the government. But they fix your interest rate at 6.5 to 7% depending on which type of loan you get. So the next step is getting a financial advisor to help lay out, the laws of the land, because when you come out of training, you're not going to be making as much as an experienced surgeon is going to be making, right? So you're not going to hit that $1 million mark, maybe ever. You don't know that, especially in a place like LA where it's very competitive.
Right.
So the financial advisors, I've already talked to them before, and they want to get your goals. They want to see, at what point do you want to start a family? Like, what's important to you? How do you want your money to be divvied up? Do you have, I'm probably going to take care of my parents when they're retired. It's like so I have to allocate money very specifically and budget it out. until I start making good money.
And that's part of the interview process too, right? They want to see your long-term plan, right?
That's right.
My son married a doctor, a Persian lovely lady, and she's a pediatrician.
Great.
And I think her bill was in the high twos.
Oh, yeah. 200,000, yeah?
Yeah,
That's
something
about right. Now, it's interesting, right? So there's a whole problem in medicine where they're having a difficult time getting people to do the primary care type of medicine. So your primary care doctor, your pediatricians, historically those jobs have been paid as well as specialized, right? And but the cost. So let's say I went into pediatrics. I would still come out with the same bill from school because that's how long it took me to go through school. And then you have residency where you're not making really enough money to pay anything back. You're just kind of living and just working.
Right.
And in the end, you know, I looked at how much I'm going to owe when school was finishing up, and I really couldn't justify going into a primary care specialty despite the fact that I couldn't get a job anywhere I want with that. I just didn't want that kind of debt burden.
Sure. And when you're in school, they have classes that are teaching you the direction and the cost and the ratios and.
No. So they leave that onus on you. So it's on you to find the money, to get the loans, to worry about the money.
So how do you get a loan for say $500,000 and they don't know you're going to finish school? I mean, you might say, hell of it, after $300,000, hell of it. What's the repercussions?
Say that one more time.
Well, you have to get a loan. You don't get it from the school. You get it from a private company.
Yeah.
That loans you the money to be a doctor, $500,000.
Right.
And let's just say last year you decide not to throw it in the towel and become a beach bum.
Oh, then you still owe that money. And so, so I know a couple of acquaintances.
But how do they guarantee? So you're doing a personal guarantee.
You're basically you sign something called a promissory note.
Okay.
Which is just saying, I promise to pay this money back. That is it. They don't care how you do it. You can drop out of medicine.
Right.
But if you spent the money that they...
But there's no collateral you put up, like...
No.
There's no... So
yeah,
they trust...
It's a big application. You know, they look at everything. They look at your financial situation, your parents' financial situation, how much they can contribute. So they do a lot of math to come up with that number and that they're going to give you. But there's no collateral, not necessarily. That's more in the private.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, there's obviously they're making money.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're getting subsidized from the government because they're only making 6% theoretically, but they're putting out a lot. They put out $500,000 for you. They're not seeing, good return on that investment.
Not for a while.
Not for a while. So I don't see I'm trying to figure out how a company that's at risk by funding doctors. I guess the government is a stopgap or something somehow.
So you have the two buckets of loans. You have the government loans, which are distributed by the federal government. Then you have the private loans like Citibank. They're not backed by the federal government or anything. They just know, and if they give you money, you are going to pay it back because you're probably going to finish, because it'd be crazy for you not to finish when you owe that much money.
Right.
And then when you finish, you're going to make enough money to be able to pay it back. You're going to be miserable, but you're going to pay it back.
Right.
Like, it's a low risk situation for them.
Oh, okay.
Because it's very, very few doctors who get that kind of money and then don't complete the whole training or the whole, they don't finish the
Right. Wow, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So doctors are a safe bet to put your money in, generally because they're trying to screw anyone. You're just trying to
Try to get educated.
You're trying to get education and do what you got to do, not cause any trouble.
So what's the cost of education goes up? What percentage? 5%, 10% a year? Or?
Oh, actually, I don't know.
Well, you've been doing it 18 years. You should know.
I know it gets expensive. It gets more expensive every year.
Yeah.
All I gotta say is that. So every year that I've been in even undergrad. So I started undergrad at UC Davis back in 2001, and tuition was $4,000 a year, which was manageable for anyone. Really, if you really want to grind, you can get to school, get a job, pay the $4,000, right? And that was that was right before Schwarzenegger came in. Over the year that Schwarzenegger came in and he made all those cuts, the tuition jumped from $4,000 a month to almost $13,000. Sorry, $4,000 a year to $13,000 a year, which is pretty tough. You can't that's hard to do for like a working college student, but you can get there. Now I think it's up to $17,000 a year, and then your graduate school, so medical school, especially at Boston University where I went, was $50,000 a year just for tuition. And these numbers are just tuition, right? So you still have to find a way to live in Boston and like not starve.
Right, because the loan is paying for your housing and just stay alive, meals, everything, right?
Yeah, so I did the math. I needed to be in Boston. I needed about almost $70,000, $65,000 to $70,000 a year to be in school and to live in Boston and live a life that wasn't just top ramen. So, and that's what I had to do for 5 years because I did graduate school too. All that money adds up, and then the interest.
500. What did you have a cocktail after you saw that number?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How often do you check it, or is that the first time in a long time?
No, I'm checking almost monthly now. It's
Motivating. So, what do you, is this your first interview with this company?
With this group, this is my first in-person interview. I've talked to them on the phone.
And how's it looking?
It's pretty good. I'd be the only spine surgeon in the group, which is great because they would refer me everything. But it's also, it depends on who you talk to. Being the only guy that does that kind of surgery in the group, it's hard to bounce ideas off people, So luckily I have enough friends in the area who also do spine that I can get ideas if I need advice on a hard case from them.
Uh-huh.
So it's good and bad.
When would you start if you get the green light?
My ideal start date would probably be kind of mid to late August, September 1st at the latest.
And that fits in their schedule?
Yeah, I think it should. I mean, I'll be done with my fellowship training at the end of July 31st, and I haven't had like a proper vacation.
18 years.
18 years and a half, 2 years. I mean, I just need 2 weeks to just unwind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of a job that's going to be, imagine, pretty intense, operating on people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts to everything, so it's stressful.
So what's a typical spine operation?
The most basic stuff is, I guess, doing a disc herniation. Like if you have a slip disc, taking that out. It's pretty bread and butter.
So we have lots of discs.
Yeah.
How many discs do we have?
How many discs do we have?
Yeah.
We have, I actually did the math. So there's 7 vertebral, 7 in the cervical spine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we have 12. It's interesting. I think that's 10, 16.
16. So we have 16 discs, and someone hurts themselves, and so they have a slip disc.
So they have, usually that happens in the neck or in the lumbar spine, so the low back. And the low back is probably the most often, just because that's where a lot of the stress is concentrated in the spine.
Uh-huh. You're seeing from the base of the skull, where the spine starts, to the what is it, the hip bone?
Down to the pelvis.
The pelvis. There's only 16 discs there.
No, I'm sorry, 23 discs.
Oh my God! You don't know how many discs?
23 discs.
You're fired.
23 discs.
Okay.
There's 23.
Strike that last part. There's 23 discs.
23 discs in the spine.
And typically it's the neck or the lower back that gets damaged.
Exactly.
Not in the middle of the back, because that's like you broke your back at that point.
The middle of the back is usually, you don't get many disc herniations just because you have the ribs attaching to the spine there. So there's not much motion. The spine is pretty stable.
Right.
The thorax.
Right.
And so the stress on your neck concentrates mostly at kind of C4, 5, C5, 6, which is that low to mid neck. And that's where a lot of the forces are.
So you'll take a disc out?
So in the neck, when you take a disc out, you usually have to fuse it. And that's when we go from the front and fuse the neck from the front. And so...
but like they're replacing hips and knees and joints and bones, you don't ever take a disc out, build a new one and put one back in?
You can't build it, but we do disc replacements. Usually in the neck. We can do them in the lumbar spine too. They're generally not. Most people don't do that.
But isn't there a thing called a spinal cord that goes through the middle of those discs?
So that comes through right behind it. So the discs are in the front of the spine. So if you take the spine and look at it from the side, basically the first 2/3 of it, or the anterior 2/3 of it, is bone. Those are your vertebral bodies. Those are your bone blocks.
Okay.
And then right behind that, in the middle to posterior third of that, is the canal. It's cord.
Oh, so the bone doesn't surround the canal?
It does, but it's it forms a ring. But if you look at a ring and then you add a piece of a bone to one end of the ring, that's your vertebral body. So it's a ring right behind the big block of bone. So, but there is a bony ring around the spinal cord.
You certainly don't want to cut the spinal cord.
No.
That's bad news.
That's a never event.
So, and they've never figured out a way of repairing a spinal cord.
No, that would be. I mean, that is what people are working on in research.
Right, because they seem to replace everything else. I mean, they're taking blind people and putting cameras in their head, and with light, making them available to see, and every other joint, heart transplants, and every other friggin' thing. It's amazing. I mean, we're
the stem cell work they're doing is in that realm. So.
Is that right? And then, of course, being a doctor, every year you're gonna go to a convention to hear the latest and the greatest.
Yeah,
so it's a continual education.
You have to stay up on things. The most, the newest treatments, and it's a learning process though. Your whole career.
Your whole career, and your memory must be pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is that when you're younger, it's so much easier to just learn and retain, but as I have the last few years. It's harder and harder sometimes to just memorize stuff, So it's and there's less rote memorization nowadays. It's we're at my level, so I think we memorize the basics, and now it's more of your understanding of problems, not necessarily memorizing small facts.
So you probably, if someone asks you later today how many discs there are, like during the interview,
well, that's the funny thing. No one's ever asked. That's the first time that's asked, and I was like, whoa. I'm trying to do the math in my head. The funny thing is, I'm terrible at arithmetic.
Well, you were. Wait a minute. If you play back this back, and you'll see this, it took you a minute to figure out, because it was like you were carrying. I thought it was you could come up with like 87, because there's 12 here, there's 18 there, there's 17, and you're
12.
adding, carry the 3, divided by 2.
Yeah. So there's 12. There's 12 in the mid back. There's 5 in the low back, and there's 6 in the neck. That's how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's 6 discs in the neck, 12 in the mid back.
18. And 5 down there, 23. And no one's ever asked you that.
No one's ever asked me that. That's the funny thing.
And it's never on a medical
test. It's never been like not once.
Come on.
They'll ask you what are the discs made of, like how do they degenerate, what's the water content, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But never.
So explain one thing I don't understand. Stem cell. Or not stem cell. Bone marrow. They take a little piece of your bone, and they transplant it, and that multiplies or something?
So you can take, your bone marrow has a specific type of stem cell in it. It's not like a stem cell from like a fetus, right? Those can turn into anything because the fetus is developed. Usually the bone marrow, you have stem cells that are kind of already walking down a line to become something, but they can isolate those and culture them and grow the cells, and then use those to help repair certain types of tissues. There's some people doing that kind of work. There's a guy in Panama who's actually, he's doing it in Panama. He's a guy, I think he practices in Miami or somewhere in Florida, like half the time during the week. But in Panama, he's got his other practice where he does stem cell work. There's just less regulation out there. So there's some folks that have had, some athletes go out there, and people who are paralyzed will go and try these treatments.
So they take the bone marrow out of one section, or say of someone else?
You can take it out of, no, it's usually out of yourself.
So you take it out and you'll transplant it back into a bone?
You can
again?
You can spray it on anything if you have enough of it, right? So you just have to isolate you have to grow the cells and get enough number of them. And then
so when they do it, they take it out, then they don't put it right back in, and
they can spin it, they can culture it, they can try to grow more cells.
Wow.
And then they can concentrate it by spinning it in a centrifuge, which is what they usually do.
Uh-huh.
And then they inject that, like let's say you have a knee problem, they may inject it into your knee. The research is all over the place. There's nothing conclusive happening.
Okay.
So, but people, if you have money and you don't want to get surgery, you want to try something, if you understand the risks.
Okay. So now, as you go forward in your career, is there something that you've got in the back of your mind that you can create or develop or invent that's going to help the spine victims or the spine?
So my work, it's interesting. So I've done orthopedic surgery and then got into spine, and so you can go into spine two different ways. One is through the way I did, which is do orthopedic surgery and then focus on spine surgery. So I've done like hip replacement and all that stuff, but I'm focusing on spine. And then the other way is to go through neurosurgery and then focus on spine. Those guys are much more facile and more experienced in working on the spinal cord itself.
Right.
So they can enter the cord, take out tumors, and work on the brain and that kind of thing.
Wow.
My wheelhouse doesn't include that kind of work. So if someone came to me with a spinal cord tumor inside their spinal cord, I would send them to a friend of mine who would be a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
But if they had a mechanical problem, like a bony issue, a fracture, that I would be able. That is mine.
So you've opened up a body and taken out an old hip and put a new one in?
Like an old hip replacement?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a revision? Yeah.
I mean, that's to me, that's many times. And you just put it all back together again, a fake hip, and you connect the muscles or something to it? How do things connect to the...
The goal would be... So there's certain muscles you can detach and try to reapproximate, and if they don't heal, it's not the end of the world. Meaning, there's a couple muscle groups in that area that you really can't mess with. So,
but you got to remove them to take the old bone out, right? You got to take the old hip out, right?
Right. So there's something called your hip abductor. So the muscles that allow you to swing your leg out to the side. Those are very important muscles to stabilize your hip and to keep that prosthesis from becoming dislocated. So you have to maintain the tension on those muscles at all times. So you can't separate that one. You should never violate those muscles. And then there's something called your short rotators, your short hip rotators. And so those we go through and then we repair back down. But if the tension on those is off, it's not that big of a deal. So it depends on the group you're talking about. And sometimes you do have to separate some muscle to get down to where you need to do work. But you have to talk to the patient and let them know that you may have a limp. You know, you'll be able to walk, but you will probably have a limp. And so, they've worked out a lot of that over the years and developing these techniques. So I wish patients who really want to do this need the surgery, but will end up with a slow limp.
Yeah. Wow.
So you really have to. I mean, it's all a discussion about risk and benefits. Right?
Sure. And insurance pays the majority of those kind of transplants.
Yeah.
How much is a hip transplant replacement cost?
What they do now is they'll give you a bundle. So it kind of depends. So the federal government, most people who get hip replacements are older than 65, right? Like they're getting to those years, and they have Medicare. And so Medicare will give you a bundle of money. Say here is, let's say $35,000, $40,000, This money is going to be used for all of the visits, all of your surgeries, and on any readmission, right? So if they have to come back within 90 days for any reason, the money has to come out of that pot. And so it forces people to operate more efficiently and to do use cost-cutting measures. But that's tough, because what ends up happening is people start picking healthier patients to operate on. Then you have someone who's a little more sick, who still needs surgery, but is at a higher risk of becoming readmitted or something like that, having a complication. Then you just stay away from those patients. And so a segment of the population that's not very healthy is not going to get the care they need, because people are afraid that would basically be doing surgery. Like if you blow the bundle, if you're
It all comes down to money.
Yeah, if your total cost of care is $50,000, but the bundle is only $45,000, then you're paying to do surgery essentially.
So it comes down to money again. Yeah. So last question. Your friend who's a neurosurgeon for a tumor in the spine. What's a guy like that bring down?
Similar.
So, similar. Okay.
So I think.
So it sounds more important, neurosurgeon than spine surgeon.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. That's right. So like a neurosurgeon, those guys work hard, man. They do important work.
But you didn't want to be a neurosurgeon.
No, I mean I didn't want to. So neurosurgery, their training involves big head injuries or operating on people, trying to save their lives. And, you look back, you sit down and you look at how you want to fit into the medical world. You can either be the guy that saves lives, right?
Right.
Lives under that kind of pressure.
Right.
And sometimes when you save a life, the life may not be worth living, right? Like the patient may be completely different. They may be
vegetable. Yeah.
And then orthopedics is attractive because it's usually you're just trying to get people back to like a level of function they were at previously.
Yeah.
Maintain a life worth living.
Wow. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best in the world with your interview and your career as a spine surgeon. I know you're going to do great. He's a very articulated guy. And thank you for being on the show.
Really appreciate it.